I've been creative as an artist since I was a small child. I tend to call myself a storyteller because I've been writing stories and books since I was, a very young child. But in terms of my company, Tall Tales, and the day-to-day creating of my collectible figurines, that's really been going now for about 5-6 years. I'm Caroline McFarlane-Watts. I'm creative director of Tall Tales, and I'm an all-round storyteller. Hidden in the sidelines of our own world is the place where all witches were banished. Good witches and bad witches no longer use their opposing magics of good and bad to keep the mortal world in balance, but as they scheme a return, this could be about to change. So I'm a full-time artist for Tall Tales. As the creative director for Tall Tales, I release characters all around the world for my IP, Good Witches, Bad Witches. So what I tend to be doing is I'll be designing my new character, which means I sketch it out and then I sculpt the character, get it cast, do a paint prototype, and then either I'm releasing all the batches of this character, so I hand paint them myself, or I've started now farming out the work more to other painters, so I'm overseeing the quality, and then I'll do dispatch, and these characters are sold, I think in 45 countries at the moment around the world. So that's my day-to-day job. So Good Witches, Bad Witches is my IP that I've been working on for 6 years, and it's about all these witches who were kicked out of our world and now live on the sort of the sidelines. And there are good witches and bad witches, the two opposing magics that keep the balance of the world. But they've been kicked out of our world, so they're sort of fighting against each other. So there's these feuds, and each character has their own story, and it's loads of fun. And part of the reason I was really keen to write it was because there aren't enough middle-aged or older female characters out there, or just different female relationships like this. And when people talk about a witch to a lot of people is a buxom, sexy girl on a broom with a garter and stockings, or she's a hag. So I wanted to put out all these different witches to challenge those ideas and have all these different female characters and a world of different female characters. And it's really fun. They're funny, kooky characters that seem to resonate with people around the world. And my book series, which will be coming out, a bit delayed because of the pandemic, each book of this series is a different witch's story. So you learn about all the different witches, and I've written most of them, or a lot of them, and illustrated them myself. And I just can't wait to share more of that with the world now that the world is opening back up and I can put my stuff out there. So I specialize really as a sculptor. I started out as a movie miniaturist, making intricate, tiny miniature models for film and TV for all sorts. And so I was a freelance miniaturist for a while. And then I took those skills and now I work just for myself as a sculptor. So before I started really scaling up as I am doing now, I used to do smaller runs of my characters, and that was all done by me. That's mostly what I'm known for. Most people who own my work, they've got something that's physically painted by me. So what I would do in that case was I would sculpt something with Super Sculpey, send it to my casting bloke. He would send me back a perfect copy in resin, and then I would paint it, check I liked it, and then say, yep, this is working out, let's have several more. And then I would do a run of 25 or 50 and sit and paint them all myself, which was interesting because it might be sort of 3 weeks of doing the exact same thing all on my like painting every little piece, and yeah, kind of hellish. But again, because it's a project that I love and it was a means to an end, I was happy to do it. I grew up in Oxfordshire in England, so it's all English countryside agricultural villages, and I grew up in a 500-year-old house in a medieval village. So all the houses have thatch roofs and look like what an American would probably perceive as a fairy tale village. So that was where I came from, and I had this massive passion for history and for fairy tales, folklore, Hans Christian Andersen, Brothers Grimm, all of those sorts of things. Those influences really led to what I do today. I mean, my passion is history and folklore. So I started writing stories even as a young child, and I actually built a cinema out of cardboard boxes and charged local villagers to come and watch my stories, and wrote a book that made it into the local newspaper when I was 6 years old. And then I went to university and did screenwriting for my degree. And so the writing part's always been there. Came to LA and signed up for, I went to UCLA, again for more screenwriting. And so that's why I developed my IP, Good Witches, Bad Witches. That's what I love to do, is to write and tell stories. As for the artistic side, the visual creative part, when I was really little, my sister told me that there were fairies living in the trees behind my house. So when I was really young, I sculpted and made small things for the fairies out of clay and put them out for the fairies to find in the branches of trees. So it started off like that. Me being artistic, creative, even as a young child. I always write my characters before I even physically make them, because I've written all my books about these witches. And I start by sketching them out and doing various drawings till I nail the design. Then I get out my wire and form the wire structure, the skeleton for a character, and start packing on super sculpey clay. That's what I love to work with. So I'll build out my character with clay. I usually work in 1-inch scale, which also known as 1/12, which means 1 inch represents a foot. So a lot of my characters are 5 foot tall, like me. Then a character, after it's been sculpted, I get it cast by somebody else in resin, and then I'll paint that one as my paint prototype, and then work from there towards mass production. So now that I'm scaling up my business, because the demand is there, and so many people want to buy my characters, and I can't keep up with the demand, which is a great place to be in. So what I'm doing now is I've worked with China to get one character mass manufactured, which was a fantastic experience. There's a factory in China. I sent my pieces, a paint prototype. They matched the paint job beautifully and sent back all these beautiful boxes of this character, and I designed the packaging, and that whole experience was really fun, but it really took a long time. It was about a year, beginning and end, to do that. But I'm also mass producing other characters domestically in America, or I'm working with junior painters and other casters, and able to produce more characters and keep up with demand. The biggest challenge for me, the only real problem in my business for me, is time, not having enough time. There's so much I want to do and I don't have enough time. So I've got books that I still need to finish off. There's more characters I want to put out. I want to expand bigger, do more, put out more. So my only real problem is not having quite enough time to do it, but I'm getting around that by hiring more people. So with the pandemic, that posed a problem because I was all geared up to work with China to do another big release, a big mass production of a beautiful character that everyone was looking forward to, and I was looking forward to offering. That was a shame because it meant so many things like that got postponed. So in that time when I wasn't able to issue characters I'd promised people, what I ended up doing was, during the pandemic, was becoming even more creative and busy myself, creating more and more characters myself and issuing lots and lots of smaller runs. And it was actually, the pandemic was a really good time for me in a way, a really good creative time. I got a lot done. I used to do so much more freelance work as a miniaturist, and I'd be hired to make a miniature model for someone else's project, a figurine, a character, all those sorts of things. And whilst those jobs were good for me and fun, for me, my favorite project is my own project. It's my own Good Witches, Bad Witches. I love creating for it. I have no restrictions, and it's a passion, so I'm never bored of it. I'm always filled with ideas and enthusiasm for it, and the energy never runs out for it because it's mine. As somebody who puts value in things, in physical things, I have a massive collection of stuff, be it books, antiques. I have a whole world of these things, which right now is sitting in a storage unit in London. And since I've been in LA, I've become sort of a minimalist because I knew that I was never going to fully make roots in this country necessarily. So I've kept all my collections abroad in storage in London. I love 80s films. I love films that use practical effects. I've always been crazy for practical effects and puppets and stop motion. I watched the Thriller music video so many times and rewound it till the VHS tape was no longer workable. So I love practical effects, American Wolf in London, all kinds of influences. I mean, cheesy films people wouldn't necessarily love today. If it's got puppets in it and practical effects and miniature models, it influenced me, it excited me, it made me want to work in the film industry. And although I come from a background of lawyers and accountants and serious people in my family, I'm the odd one out who, head in the clouds, writer, storyteller, visual person who wanted to go off to LA and work in the film industry and be artistic. I am sometimes asked if I consider what I do, if I consider my work to be toys. But I say that they're not, because they're not really suitable for children. The people who buy them are adults. I sell my work now all over the world, as I mentioned, and I've got some wonderful fans who will buy pretty much everything I put out, because everything of mine is collectible. Like, they're all part of the same world, they're part of the same IP, it's the same collection. So I put out my numbered pieces and my signed pieces, and they're on the shelves of collectors around the world, and sometimes they send me pictures of their displays, and they're alongside Tim Burton figurines and those sorts of things. So I think the people that my work appeals to are people who love stories and Disney and stop motion, those types of people, my type of people. So my company name is Tall Tales Productions, because that's what I call my workshop where all the magic happens, is Tall Tales. So you can find my work on my Tall Tales website, which is www.tall-tales.com, and there's an online shop there where you can buy a lot of my work or message me if it's out of stock. And I have Tall Tales Productions Instagram, Tall Tales Productions Facebook, and Tall Tales Productions YouTube channel. So I'm really excited for the future and for where this is going, the trajectory for Good Witches, Bad Witches, because now that I'm expanding and my collectible figurines are getting into more homes quicker, I'm able to focus more on my book series, which is great, because that's what I truly love to do the most, is to write. So I'm looking forward to seeing my Good Witches, Bad Witches books getting produced and out there. It's a whole book series. And someday Good Witches, Bad Witches being made into a feature film.